Hey guys, X-Men issue 28, which came out in 1994, written by Fabian Nicieza, and I hope I've pronounced that last name correctly, by the way, but anyway, and drawn by Andy Kubert, who's a fantastic artist, by the way. I would put him on the same pedestal as someone like Jim Lee, and that is praise indeed. I'm pretty sure Kubert has a legendary status. Pretty sure, yeah. If he doesn't, he should. Anyway, yeah, this issue is really interesting because it deals, perhaps on a subconscious level, with issues of morality and I would say hints of self righteousness also. And I'll explain that to you as we go along. It centers around Sabretooth, who basically seems to be having not a crisis of conscience per se. He's trying to determine whether all the bad things that he's done in the past, and he's done a lot of bad things. He's basically like a atomic level mass murderer, right? I mean, considering he's been around for over 100 years, he's done a lot of killing in his time. But what he's trying to get to the root of is the killing that's taken place, all the crimes he's committed. Is it because of his inherent evil nature, or is it a result of the horrendous events that have transpired in his life? I mean, I know the answer to that. I think many people who read comics know the answer. It's because he's an evil prick. And the reason I say this is because Logan, Wolverine, has also gone through similar experiences, much like Victor Creed. But unlike Victor, Logan has always tried to fight the beast, the beastly nature that he was born with. Right? He tries to do good. He tries to keep the body count as low as possible. Whereas Victor Sabretooth, he revels in it. So from the outset, I knew that his journey into self-realization was doomed from the start because he's just evil through and through, and it was just a matter of time before he would, of course, go back to his wily evil ways. Anyway, in this issue, though, he is in the X-Men's mansion, being kept in the basement section, and what they're trying to do is there are two camps basically. There's the camp of let's give him a chance, and there's the camp of like, are you out of your mind? This is Sabretooth. Obviously, he's going to cause trouble. Now, to be fair, the two main characters in this comic book who are not rooting for Sabretooth, that's the wrong that's the wrong word, who are willing to give Victor the benefit of the doubt potentially are Charles Xavier and Cyclops. Uh, Charles Xavier, I think, because he wants to see if he can rehabilitate Victor, because he's got this. I'm sure he's got this like sort of savior messiah complex. Old Charles, and Cyclops, because basically he does whatever Daddy Charles says, and that is what it is in effect. Whereas with Beast and Jean Grey, they're a little bit more reluctant to take Victor at face value. Well, I suppose if you take him at face value, you'd run a million miles because he's a complete monster, and they know this. They know him historically, and that makes a lot of sense. That's the common sense approach, which for some strange reason, Xavier and Cyclops seems to be missing in this book. Anyway, to cut a long story short, whilst Victor is living in the basement of the mansion, he's scaring the crap out of Jubilee, who's rightly, petrified of his presence, as are a lot of people in the mansion. But knowing the history of Sabretooth, Jean Grey decides to make an example out of Sabretooth, basically just to show everyone that look, he's just a big bully who thinks he's scary and dangerous. But the reality is that any bully can be put down if you have the power to do so, and she does. As she describes, she is an atomic bomb to his firecracker, and she literally beats the crap out of him. Thus showing to the inhabitants of the mansion that don't be so scared of this big bad wolf character, because really I can kick his ass, and she does. And I suppose this issue basically very clearly answers the question of who would win in a fight between Jean and Victor, and it's going to be Jean, obviously. Anyhow, that settles that question. This comic book really is a bit of an oddity, actually, in terms of well, I suppose in terms of the execution of the story. The premise is an interesting one. The art is fantastic. The cover is brilliant. Everything is there, but it raises some questions about the self righteousness of Charles Xavier. This moral stance that he's taken in relation to Sabretooth at the expense of everyone else's safety, and more importantly, his stance with Victor Creed in relation to his history with Logan, of which Charles Xavier is fully aware. It just didn't make any sense to me. Look, if a friend, if a very close friend, someone you love, comes to you and says that, this guy, Big Bob basically bullied me, assaulted me, hurt me, killed members of my family. I hate this guy. Oh God, I hate this guy, right? And so your friends told you this, and then suddenly a few years later, Big Bob, that same Big Bob, comes to you and says, "Hey man, help me out. I need your assistance." I think as a friend to to the victim, as a friend to the victim, you would say to Big Bob, "Bugger off, mate. Not interested." That would be the natural response. Do you know why? Because people naturally have a sense of loyalty to people whom they consider friends. Sometimes, you can't just sit on the fence. You have to take a side, and you have to basically you have to live with it. You have to deal with it. But with what this comic showed me was that Charles Xavier is a self-righteous prat. I mean, are you not aware of all the horrendous things that Victor Creed has done throughout the decades against poor Logan? I mean, have we forgotten Silver Fox? Right? Look, Charles will be aware of Silver Fox. He's been in Logan's mind, right? And Logan's probably already sort of disclosed this willingly himself anyway. But Logan's, was it his first love? I don't know, but one of his love interests, a very great love interest in Silver Fox, was killed out of spite by Victor Creed, just to prove a point that, happiness is not for you. And it was done on his birthday. It was done on Logan's, well, supposed birthday. Did he even remember? It was something that Victor said to him, happy birthday. This is the start of your rebirth, I suppose, as a miserable guy just like me. So basically, Victor wanted to share his misery with Logan, and he did it in the worst way possible by killing the woman that Logan loved. What a dick move. I mean, what a horrible character Sabretooth is. And throughout the years, he has hounded Logan. Every single year on his supposed birthday, he comes and basically kills someone that Logan loves, or, starts a brawl, ends up causing a lot of damage, severely wounding Wolverine. He does this every single year to the point where now Logan hates the idea of his birthday. And again, Charles Xavier, Professor Charles Xavier, that self righteous, moralistic git, is aware of the horrendous history between these two characters, between Wolverine and Sabretooth, and yet he still entertains Victor's request. How? And I'm pretty sure it's because of this self righteous Messiah Savior complex that he has, this notion of, like, I can make the world okay, and I can make everyone a better person. No, you cannot. No, you cannot. Because the amount of evil that it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that, Victor Creed is an evil son of a so and so. It doesn't. But for some reason, Xavier's mega intellect seemed to have missed this point. Now, the other question that you have to ask is that, by the same logic, right? By the same logic of everyone can be rehabilitated, right? If a mass murdering, rapist, child abuser suddenly wrote a letter to Charles Xavier saying that, look, I'm about to be killed in 2 weeks' time, right? I'm on death row. But listen, scan my mind. You'll see that I've suffered a lot of abuse. I can be changed. Please bring me into your school for, gifted mutants. I'm a human, but just give me a chance. Would would Charles Xavier say, yeah, yeah, no, absolutely, come down, bring all your buddies, bring all your murdering rapist buddies, and we'll see what we can do? No, he wouldn't. No, he wouldn't. And that wouldn't happen anyway, anywhere, right? I know with comics you have to have a slight suspension of belief. Of course, that's understood. But this is ridiculous, guys. So the question is that if Charles Xavier wouldn't do it for all those inmates on death row, why is he doing this for Sabretooth? Again, these are chinks in the armor. These are things which kind of, I don't know, spoil the story a little bit. Because suspension of belief is one thing, but common sense, suspension of common sense. And there is a difference. There is a difference between suspension of belief, trust me, and the suspension of just common sense. The common sense seems to be missing in this writing. And I don't know why. I don't know why. It is an interesting idea, but the execution, I really do feel the level of support that Xavier's and Cyclops are willing to offer to this guy who's basically put Logan through hell, through absolute sheer hell. I mean, who do you stand with? Have you forgotten all those years of loyalty that Logan showed to you, to all the members? He would die for the X-Men. And they know this. Charles Xavier knows that Wolverine would die for his fellow X-Men. Something that Victor Creed never would for anyone. And so, what can I say? It's there are moments of stupidity, I suppose, peppered throughout the literary sort of passages of Marvel comics. Historically speaking, I guess this is one of those things. It does raise an interesting, I suppose, point about the issue of self-righteousness, I suppose, more than anything else. And what is true morality? Is morality giving Sabretooth, a mass murderer, who easily, I'm sure, if you compare the body count of someone like the Punisher and Sabretooth, I'm pretty sure Sabretooth just the difference being, of course, that Frank Castle justifies his killing by killing bad guys, whereas Sabretooth just kills everyone and mostly innocents, right? So is the correct moral stance helping someone like Sabretooth, or is the correct moral stance being loyal to your friend of many, many years, Logan, who stood by you, who supported you, who's been willing to sacrifice his life for you, and tell Victor Greed to bugger off? Well, I know what I would do if I was in that position. I wouldn't even open the door for a character like Sabretooth. I'd shoot him and then sort of like ask, and then make a comment afterwards. But that's just me, guys. That's just me. For me, loyalty is a pretty important thing, and I think that in this issue of the X-Men, the writer showed that Charles Xavier is a disloyal prick, and I was disappointed. I was disappointed, but you learn things, right? You learn things as you go through life, and that's what I learned about. Yeah, funnily enough, it was more of a revelation about Charles Xavier than it was about Sabretooth. How funny is that? Well, there you go, guys. That's my ramble over for now. Thanks for joining. I'll catch you in the next one.